क्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। ॐ सिन्दूरारुणविग्रहां त्रिनयनां माणिक्यमौलिस्फुरत्तारानायकशेखरां स्मितमुखीमापीनवक्षोरुहां पाणिभ्यां मलिपूर्णरत्नचषकं रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां रत्नघटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् पराम् अम्बिकाम्। ॐ ध्यायेन्नित्यं महेशं रजतगिरिनिभं चारुचन्द्रावतंसं रत्नाकल्पोज्ज्वलाङ्गं परशुमृगवराभीतिहस्तं प्रसन्नं पद्मासीनं समन्तात् स्तुतममरगणैः व्याघ्रकृत्तिं वसानं विश्वाद्यं विश्वबीजं निखिलभयहरं पञ्चवक्त्रं त्रिनेत्रम्। ॐ नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ॐ श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्।
धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवाश्चैव किमकुर्वत सञ्जय। श्रीभगवानुवाच क्लैब्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप। यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्। परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे। वीतराग भयक्रोधा मन्मया माम् उपाश्रिताः बहवो ज्ञानतपसा पूता मद्भावमागताः। कर्मणि अकर्म यः पश्येत् अकर्मणि च कर्म यः स बुद्धिमान् मनुष्येषु स युक्तः कृत्स्नकर्म कृत्। ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्महविर्ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणाहुतं ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यम् ब्रह्म कर्म समाधिना श्रेयान् द्रव्यमयात् यज्ञात् ज्ञानयज्ञः परन्तप सर्वं कर्म अखिलं पार्थ ज्ञाने परिसमाप्यते तत्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनः तत्त्वदर्शिनः यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषेण द्रक्ष्यसि आत्मनि अथो मयि तस्मात् अज्ञानसम्भूतं हृत्स्थं ज्ञानासिनात्मनः छित्त्वैनं संशयं योगम् आतिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ भारत न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैवं सुकृतं विभुः अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयोनय एव ते आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः
Very nice. Thank you, Rakesh. Very nice. So now we are in, I believe we finished 7-7,
Yes, Prabhu.
right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. So very good. I'm glad that everyone is able to join. I think this time, particularly, no better way to spend time than reading Gita or these kind of meetings. So I will just pick up on 7, which is a very significant verse. And as I mentioned last time, the meaning of that explains how we are connected to our pitras through our parents, and why the aspect of leaving the physical body of any jiva creates disturbance in those descended from that jiva, those related to that jiva. So, mattah parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya Mai sarvamidam protam sutre manigana iva. So nothing whatsoever is beyond me, paratara. All this is strung on me like clusters of gems on a thread. So manigana, so sutra is the thread. Just as clusters of gems are strung on a thread, these jivas, these whose pranas flow through the jivas, they are strung on a single thread of pran itself. That pran is technically called Hiranyagarbha. What in the Brahmanda is called Hiranyagarbha is called prana in the Pindanda, in the Jivatma. So this, as you know, Aikyanusandhanam.
In Sandhya.
Yes. Asavadityo Brahma, Brahmaiva Hamasmi, right?
Yes.
The same idea is echoed here, and should be a that connection should be made. That identity is what is sought through all this effort. So Shravana, listening to that concept first in the mind, opens up the possibility of that in the mind of the open-minded and the faithful. That then inspires practice, and that practice, when successful, leads to the direct experience. And that practice, as we know, has four paths, but one is a path of purification, which is Karma Yoga, and the other, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Raja Yoga. They are more direct paths, you may say. But at the same time, the Karma Yoga path is unavoidable, because as long as the human being inhabits the body, there is always some karma going on. Therefore, that is not optional for anyone. And as we were discussing, the most basic Nitya karma is the Sandhyavandanam, which is why we are practicing that on Sundays. So now let's move to Kena Kena Dharmena Vishishte Tvayi Sarvamidam Protam Ityuchyate. On you, distinguished by what all traits is this entire world woven? By what? Here the word dharma, as I mentioned, is a complicated word which has many meanings, and here it means characteristics or traits. Kena kena dharmena, by what characteristics? Instrumental case. Vishishte, and those are specialized, distinctive. Tvayi, are you, in you, sarvamidam, in you, all this world. Protam, how is it said? Ityuchyate, the answer is, who is going to read?
I can read.
Okay, good.
Rasohamapsu kaunteya prabhasmi sasi suryayo pranava sarva vedeshu sabdaha khe paurusham rushu.
Very nice, thank you. Yes. So we break it up. Raso aham apsu. I am the essence of waters, in water. So this is a very profound statement that the Lord is making. So remember that we've already discussed that the entire phenomenal world is apprehended only by the five senses. There is no other way by which we know the phenomenal world. We can smell, we can taste, we can see, we can touch, we can hear. There is nothing else in the phenomenal world by which you know things. And that's a remarkable advancement of yogic science, which Western science is still feebly grappling with. This is an amazing discovery, which Western science is still to acknowledge. You know, that the entire phenomenal world can be reduced to five. That means infinity can be collapsed to five insofar as sense perception goes. And beyond sense perception, there is no knowledge we have of the physical world. The entire Bhulok is only known through the five senses. This is the most profound statement of yogic science that is completely ignored by modern science. Okay. Now the question is, okay, what do we do with this five, right? Then we will later see that Sankhya philosophy shows that these five are in fact composed of three, which are the three gunas. The entire process of sense perception happens through sattva, rajas, tamas, the three gunas being interwoven in different proportions. But this science will only be known to the one who meditates on these matters. And it's only attained through strict disciplinary practice. If one does not perform the practice, you cannot have a direct knowledge of it. Your knowledge will be hearsay knowledge. Then you have two choices. You can completely reject it and ignore it and go about your life, or you can provisionally accept it and then with great determination apply yourself to directly experience it. That's all there is. So now to understand this first piece, Raso Aham Apsu, one needs to understand these theoretical backgrounds, these bases. Without that, it is not possible to understand what is meant by this rasa. Okay, so this beautiful concept of how the three gunas become the five is called Panchikaranam. The five making, literally what it means is the making of the five. And this was a beautiful treatise written by Bhagavan Sri Adi Shankaracharya, in which he explains how do the five come about. And that process is attained by the meditative practice. So the first thing to understand is that when we have the perception of any object, there is the sense organ through which that knowledge is gained. There is the action of sensing, and there is an object that has to be sensed. If these three are not there, you cannot have objective sense perception. So you see how logical this science is, right? So there must be a sense organ, there must be the act of sensing, and there must be the object that is being sensed. So let us take, in this case, so we first talked about smell. This one pertains to taste. So this is deeply connected to the chakras within the human body. So in the Swadhisthana chakra resides the sense of taste. And corresponding to each of these functions, there are Adhisthana Devatas. That is, they are presiding deities. So when we say Grane Ashvinau, that is for smell, the deities are Ashwins. Jihve Varunaha. So Jihva is the tongue. And symbolically, now there is the gross tongue, but symbolically you can also think of the perception of taste itself, right? Tongue is only a physical object, right? But when we say taste, this actually goes through some neuroreceptors, it goes deeper, there are probably some biochemicals released, and the mind or the brain, and if you want to take the physical aspect, responds to that, right? There is some synapse that gets triggered, yes or no? So it's a complex process, this sensing. The yogic theory applies not only to a gross layer, which we can measure in science, but there are subtler layers at which sensing happens. There is also prana. There is a pranic kosha of sensing, and there is a manomaya kosha. These are not measurable in the scientific realm because their dimension lies outside the measurable. So we call that sthula, sukshma, and karana, right? Those things that lie in the sukshma and karana are not measurable in the scientific sense because we have not, those instruments can only be developed through yoga for that measurement. Scientific world, modern science can measure on the sthula sharira, definitely. And its laws definitely pertain to the physical world. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you wish to confine your dimensions and your exercises to the physical world, more power to you. And that will be the limit. That will be the ambit of your ambition and the ambit of your life. But having been born in this fantastic Vedic tradition and heritage, we know that that is merely a fraction of our capability and our capacity. Right? So therefore, definitely let us have physics and the natural sciences pertain. They have laws, those dharmas hold. They pertain to the sthula sharira. Let us now examine what can be done in the sukshma sharira. So there Bhagavan says, raso aham apsu. So let us take now the sensing of taste. So as I said, jihve varuna. Varuna devata is the adhisthana devata of taste. It may not be very surprising to you that Varuna is also the lord of the... What is Varuna? Who is Varuna lord of?
Wind.
Water.
Apaha.
Apa. Yes. Correct? Lord of the waters. Right? All the samudras, etc. Pracheta, he is also called Prachetas. So in the evening, by the way, and the direction of Varuna is in the west. So when we do the Sandhya Vandanam, in the Sayam Sandhya Vandanam, there is a prayer to Varuna. Imam me Varuna Shrudhi Havam Adhyacha Mridaya Tvam Avasyurachake Tatvayami Brahmana Vandamano Tadashahaste Yajamano Havirbhihi Ahedamano Varuna Ihabhoti Urusugum Samanaha Ayuk Pramoshihi. If we say this every day, then you will gain intimate knowledge of Varuna, right? Varuna is also the Lord of right and wrong. He is the Lord of Rita, right? He decides, you might say, he delivers the judgments, as it were. So now we have Raso Aham Apsu. So now we have the waters, and the waters are here, you may say, the gross aspect, the object which the sense of taste senses, right? So now we have the object and we have the sense organ. So then there is an act of sensing. So we say, Jikhve Varuna Rasa Tanmatra Apaha Tanmatra Apaha. Ashwino Gandha Tanmatra Prithvi let me just, I have a way of a sequence in which I say the three. So, yes, sorry. The first one comes, Payoho Mrityu Grane Ashwino Gandha Tanmatra Pratihi. Upastha Prajapati Jikhve Varunaha Rasatan Matra. So we are referring to now the organ of sensing and the sense object. But preceding that is also the organ of action. So with each chakra is also associated an organ of action. So with the Mooladhara chakra is the action of excretion. So we say Payoho Mrityu. So the organ of excretion, its Adhisthana Devata is Yama or Mrityu. In the Swadhisthana chakra, the organ of generation or reproduction is called Upastha, and the lord of that is Prajapati. Naturally, the creator is the lord of the organ of procreation. That is a Karmendriya. The Jnanendriya, Jikhve Varunaha, Rasa Tanmatra Apaha. And the Tanmatra is the manifestation of this gross water on the subtle level. So when Bhagavan says Raso Aham Apsu, it is not just the essence as in Rasaha, as we say Ras, we have Ras in a colloquial sense, which is juice or the essence, right? It can be so many things. Am's Ras is the nectar or the essence of Am, right? But then we talk about Ras when we enjoy, we talk about the Navarasas, the 9 emotions, right? So again, what is the essential emotion in a dance or a song, right? We think of that. But this rasa is a very technical word that is being used. And here it corresponds to that tanmatra by which the organ of taste is able to apprehend the taste itself of water. So when Bhagavan says, I am raso aham apsu, I am the essence of water, it's in two ways. I am the essential quality of water in the colloquial sense that we understand ras, but it's also that I am the most subtle form. So when we say rasa here, it is both essence in the colloquial form, but also the subtle meaning. Raso aham apsu kaunteya, O Arjuna, and I am the essence of the waters. Prabha asmi shashi surya yoho. So of both the sun and the moon, I am the light. Actually, this occurs in the Christian tradition also, I think. I believe Jesus has said, I am the light of the world. right? They say la luz del mundo in Spanish, the light of the world. La luz is the light of mundo is the world. So I am the light of the sun and the moon. Shashi is, of course, a moon. Surya is sun. Pranavaha sarva vedeshu. This is very powerful. In all the Vedas, I am the Pranava, which is Om, right? Without Om, there is no Veda. Om is the very substratum of the Vedas. It is the essence of the Vedas. It is the core. It is what all the Vedas aspire to. Shabda K. Again, now we are coming back to the same business of sense and sense perception. So just like we have the apaha for water, when we come up to the Vishuddha Chakra, this is the sense of sound. So here again, the receiving sense organ, Jnanendriya, is the Shrotram, the ears. Right? That's the very gross physical aspect, but the sense object of hearing. So for here, that same mnemonic which I say would be Vach Vakhnihi, Shrotram Digdevata, Shabda Tanmatra, Akasha. Okay, so Vach Vakhnihi. So speech is the Karmendriya. Right? It's an action organ. Speech, Vakhnihi. Vakhnihi is a fire actually, is the Adhisthana Devata of Vach. Shrotram of the hearing, the Dig Devatas, the lords of the directions, okay, are the Devatas of hearing. And then Shabda Tanmatra, again this Tanmatra which I said, is Akash. So space is the Tanmatra of sound. So Kha is space. Shabda is the sound inherent in the space. In space, the sound, I am that. Paurusham Nrishu, and I am manhood in men. What is the essence of a man? Right? That is the Lord. That's what he says. So, in this way, now, we will understand why the very first part of our Sandhyavandanam practice is the ritual sipping of water, Achamanam. Right? By taking that pure water, because the Lord is in pure water, or if you want to go to the abstract, pure water is actually consciousness. It's nothing else. The most manifest form of consciousness in the physical world is water. That's why, if you notice, when you bathe, you feel very fresh. Why? Okay. Why is it that in Hindu families, the first thing they say, get up in the morning and take a bath before you come and do anything? But that practice has fallen off. Nowadays, nobody requires that at home. Children nowadays don't want to follow that. But the moment you apply water to the entire body, it gets incredibly refreshed. Your mind is going to be like a crystal clear to receive any studies, anything you study. You're going to be very fresh, right? If you get angry or you get disturbed, you go wash your face, you will calm down. It works like a formula. Why does it work like a magic formula? Because of this, no other reason, right? If you take a drink of water, particularly with the mantras, Achamanam, it is going to purify you. The very act of Achamanam is purifying. It is both symbolic and also literal. And that is the power of these practices. They operate on both the Sthula Sharira and the Sukshma and the Karana. Right? That's the power of this practice. Achha, so Bhagavan is now going to explain to us The essence of water is flavor, is rasaham. Apam yah sarah sah rasah. Tasmin rasabhute mai apah protaha ityartha. Evam sarvatra. And this is the idea. The following statements may also be understood. Just as yatha aham apsu rasah evam prabha asmi shashi suryoyoho. Pranavah omkaraha sarva vedeshu. Tasmin pranavabhute mai sarve vedaha protaha. So across me, the Om, all the Vedas are woven. Tatha ke akashe shabda sarabhutaha. So in space, its essence is sound, and across me, as such, is the space woven. Mayi kham protam. Tatha paurusham purushasya bhavaha paurusham yataha pumbuddhi. Due to which arises the idea that I am a man, that one is a man. Mrishu tasmin mayi purushaha prutha. In that way, all thus are men woven. Now, this our Vedic philosophy is very, very deep. It is very symbolic. It is not purely restricted to the physical plane. And so, to understand its symbolism, one needs to have a subtle mind. If your mind is not subtle, it is very difficult to grasp this verse. But the mind can be made subtle, and it is made subtle by practice, right? By repeatedly withdrawing it from the constant gross bombardment of the senses is only the way to make it subtle. Only when the mind is quietened will it become capable of grasping subtle concepts, right? Acha, next one, please.
I can go.
Please.
Punyo gandha prativyamu cha tejaschasmi vibhavasau jivanam sarvabhuteshu tapaschasmi tapasvishu.
Beautiful. Thank you. Very nice. Acha. Now again, Bhagavan, you see, I told you this trick formula of the 5 senses. If you capture that, you can get a lot of these verses. Punyo gandha prithivyam. So again, it comes back to that point I said. The formula I recited was payoho mrityu grane ashvinau gandha tanmatra prithvi. See again the keywords. The prithvi is earth, gandha tanmatra is the subtle form of the sense of smell. So what does he say here? Punyo gandha prithivyam. I am pure odor in earth. And by this we should not understand mud. This is a subtle point. When we access any object, right, we can access it in one or all of the 5 ways, correct?
Yes.
But the idea is that when we take pure water, for instance, so let us start first with space, okay? The next one is the feeling of touch, right? These are increasing levels of grossness. Then you can see something, right? And then water. And the idea is that when you come to water, pure water has no smell, right? So the idea is these are exemplary example objects in the physical world which correspond to each of the senses being super added onto them. So when you hear sound, you can't touch sound. You can't see sound. You can't taste sound. You can't smell sound, but you can hear it, right? Then you can think of example of something that you can hear or locate in space. Now hearing, remember that we talk about space as the, so there is a sense of I can touch something. In order to touch something, it has to be at some distance from me, right? If it contacts my skin, there has to be a sense of spatial orientation to that object, right? Plus, it also has a sensory touch sense, right? So the one that we just say, there is air, right? Air has both spatially pervading quality, but I can also sense it. I can feel the breeze, right? We can also hear the wind. You can say the wind is howling, right? But you cannot see the wind. You can hear the wind, you can touch, you can feel the caress of a breeze, but you cannot see the breeze. So see how brilliant this logic was. Space, wind, then we come to fire. Fire has all three properties, right? It is located spatially. You can hear also the crackling of fire. You can definitely feel the touch of fire, no, not very pleasant. And then you can see it, right? So fire among the pure elements has all three sensory aspects. Water has four. You can hear the sound of rushing water. You can touch water. It is cool to touch. You can see water and you can taste water. You don't want to taste fire probably. You may not survive after that, right? Finally, earth. Earth has also the property superadded to water of being capable of being smelled, right? So this is why these five elements have been designated as special, right? So when we think, when he says Prithvi, there is a Prithvic aspect to every object that you can smell. That is how it is to be understood. This is why the science is so subtle. If you just read it like some creationist text and say, oh, you know, God is in earth, blah, 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 fine. Yes, then you will remain at that level. But if you want to really understand what the Lord is saying, you must attune oneself to the finer, subtler, symbolic meanings that are there, which is what makes the Bhagavad Gita such a universally, the highest thought of all mankind is embodied here. That is why.
Mama, I have a question.
Yes, Chetas, namaste, how are you?
I'm doing good. How can you hear the earth?
How can you?
Hear the earth.
Probably if you think of an earthquake, which may not be a very pleasant thing to think of, right? You can probably a very violent earthquake you could hear, or a landslide, right?
Yeah.
Good point. You're a sharp and keen. That's why children are very ask the hardest questions.
Thank you.
If I can pass your questions, then the class is a success. Good one.
Thank you for telling the importance of water. He refuses to take shower.
That's fine, Chetas. I think it's good to keep it as a goal, right? And try to move towards it slowly, and then you'll start to enjoy it. Yeah. Another trick is if you find in winter the water is too cold, you can start with warm and then make it colder. See how cold you can. You can play little games with it, right? So it won't be so. Then you'll start to love it. Once you start doing something often, you start to enjoy it. Yeah, very good. Acha, any? Oh, sorry, we're still here. Acha, Tejas Chasmi Vibhavasau. Okay, so Vibhavaso, again fire. Now again, here we have the rasa. So I have to go back to so for the Muladhara Sadhisthana Manipuraka Chakra, it is Padau Vishnu. So the organ of Karmendriya located in the Manipuraka is locomotion. Padau, feet. The Lord of Adhisthana Devata, that is Vishnu. Padau Vishnu. Netre Suryaha. The Jnanendriya is the eyes. And the Adhisthana Devata of that Jnanendriya is Surya. Netre Surya. Rupa Tanmatra Agni. The Tanmatra of form in the gross plane is Agni, which is fire. So here Bhagavan is saying, Te Chasmi Vibhavasau. So Tejaha, splendor and fire. So here पुण्यः इति पुण्यः सुरभिः गन्धः पृथिव्यां च अहं तस्मिन् मयि गन्धभूते पृथ्वी प्रोता पुण्यत्वं गन्धस्य स्वभावतः एव पृथिव्यां दर्शितम् अबादिषु रसादेः पुण्यत्व उपलक्षणार्थम् अपुण्यत्वं तु गन्धादीनाम् अविद्याधर्मात्यपेक्षं संसारिणां भूतविशेष संसर्गानि निमित्तं भवति तेजः दीप्तिः च अस्मि विभावसौ अग्नौ. So, splendor and fire, deeptihi. And then generalizing, jivanam sarvabhuteshu, tapaschasmi tapasvishu. And I am life in all beings. Jivanam sarvabhuteshu. And tapaha, austerity, in ascetics. Tapaha cha asmi tapasvishu. Tasmin tapasi mayi tapasvinah protaha. Pure odor in the earth that I am, across me as that odor is the earth woven. As a matter of course, in earth, the purity of the odor has been pointed out in order to stress the purity of essence, etc., in water and so forth. The impurity of odor is contingent on nescience, demerit, etc., of the transmigrating jivas and caused by contact with particular elements. Splendor means the luminosity in the fire. Life in all beings is that by which they are all are alive. Also, I am austerity in the ascetics. Across me, as such, are the ascetics woven. Tapasvinaha protaha. Next one.
I can read.
Okay.
Wonderful. Yes, Chetas.
Vajam mam sarva bhutanam vidhi partha sanatanam buddhi matam mata asmi tejasvinam aham.
Very good. Bijam. Bijam is seed. Mam. Sarva bhutanam vidhi. So vidhi is the verb. No. Imperative. Right? Second person singular. Mam vidhi. Know me. Bijam. To be the seed. Of what seed? To be the seed in all beings. Partha. Oh Partha. Sanatanam. And he is the eternal seed. Buddhihi buddhimatam. Of intellectual beings, I am the intellect. Buddhimatam asmi. And of course, we know this buddhi, translated as intellect, is that which resides in the Vijnanamaya Kosha. So, human being in Taittiriya Upanishad described by the Pancha Koshas, Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya. In that Vijnanamaya Kosha is situated this buddhi. Although translated as intellect, it is that capacity of human being to observe oneself objectively in the third person, right? The ability of one to stand apart from the body and the mind's functions is buddhi. That's why it is deeper than the mind. It is within the Manomaya Kosha. Otherwise, one could not, from the standpoint of buddhi, observe the workings of the mind itself. So although translated loosely as intellect, not everything that we think of in English intellectual corresponds to buddhi. That may be sunk still in the mind, right? But when in meditation, one sits and observes the workings of the mind and the body, that standpoint is buddhi. So Bhagavan says, among those who are buddhimata, who have attained that level of observation power through their meditation, in them I am that buddhi. So intellect of the intellectual is a little bit liable to misinterpretation and misunderstanding because of shortcomings of the English language to capture these concepts that are the breadth of which is there only in Sanskrit and which is only experienced through meditation. And so one needs to have the combination of the experience coupled with the terminology so that one can build that mapping across all our scripture. Only then this clarification of this kind of business can be done. Tejaha tejasvinam aham. And similarly, I am the splendor of the splendorous. So let us see what the commentary is. Bijam iti. Bijam praroha karanam mam vidhi sarvabhutanam. the cause of germination. He Partha, Sanatanam, Chirantanam, eternal seed power. Kimcha, Buddhihi Viveka Shaktihi, Antahkaranasya Buddhimatam. So, Viveka Shakti, power of discrimination. Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. Buddhimatam, Viveka Shakti Matam Asmi. Tejaha Pragalbhyam Tadvatam Tejasvinam Aham. In respect of those who can discriminate, he is the power of discrimination, and I am the splendor, the power of those who are endowed with it. So remember in the, we say in the Vedic verse, Sahana Bhavatu, we said that, right? Tejasvina Vadhitamastu. Tejasvina, right? Can you recognize Tejasvinas? Tejasvi? You can. You will know what is Tejas. Tejas, so actually Tejas is a very interesting point. Going with this idea of Sthula Sukshma Karana, or with the idea of gross, subtle, and subtlest or causal, in the theory of Ayurveda, which is an Upaved, there are three parallel concepts: Ojas, Tejas, and Prana. Okay. Ojas is that energetic power that resides in our physical body, in the Sthula Sharira, which gives us power of immunity. It's what gives us strength. That is its gross aspect. Tejaha, which has more of the, so that is more concerned with the earth and watery aspects, Ojas. When you consider the more fiery aspect, it is Tejas. And you can see it in people's face. Those people who have spent a lot of time in study of Vedas, scriptures, you can see a luster in the eyes, right? That is Tejas. And then it's most in the, when you consider the air and spatial aspects of it, there it becomes prana. And so it is by pranayam that one builds both ojas and tejas. So person who does pranayam builds physical immunity, and their face shines with a luster, because the impurities in the nadis are progressively removed by practices like nadi shodhana, etc. Right? So tejasvina, tejaha tejasvina, tejasvinam aham. And again, that kind of brings me back to the point of why Sandhya Vandanam as a Nitya Karma is so powerful, because it embodies the pranayam into it already. So if you want to be Ojasvinaha and Tejasvinaha, pranayam is the way to do it. Next one, 11, who is going to read, please?
I can read.
Yeah.
Balam balvatam chaham kamaraga vivarjitam dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava.
Balam balavatam asmi. I am mighty. Among the mighty, I am might. Kama raga vivarjitam. This is very powerful and beautiful. Bhagavan is qualifying that I am might in those mighty who are devoid, vivarjita, of desire, kama and raga, attachment. This is a very important point, because there are many things that are mighty with which these characteristics are associated, right? So Bhagavan would say, I am not associated with the Supreme Commander of the United States, although that is very mighty, because it is not devoid of kamam and ragam, right? So what kind of, Bhagavan is referring here to the type of balam that you see in the great gurus, right? When we think of Bhagavan Sri Adi Shankaracharya, an example of balam, the kind of balam that allowed the Digvijayam, Padayatra of the entire Bharatvarsh, in order to spread the word of Vedanta, right? It's unimaginable that somebody could go walking across all of India in those times. Maybe it's more imaginable in those times than today, but I doubt that any of us could do that. I don't think we could walk to Ankeny tomorrow if we had to do it. Think about it, right? Not easy. So balam balavatam, right? And also to go not out of a thing of prowess, physical prowess, but with the highest ideal of spreading, doing the Vedanta pravachanam. Another example you have of the other great gurus, Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, right? Many tremendous feats have been attributed to him, but they are not physical feats, right? They are in feats in all planes. Why do I say that? Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna actually did nothing in his life. What did he do? Nothing. Yes or no? He was born in Kamarkupur and he came all the way to Kolkata, lived in Dakshineshwar, right? What else did he do? He did nothing. He did nothing. Zero. But yet, he has animated so many mathas, so much service, so many hospitals, so many schools, all in the name of Ramakrishna. So then what has he done? He has done the work of titans. But he did nothing, right? Similarly, you take Ramana Maharshi, Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi, sitting in Tiruvannamalai. He never wrote anything much. He wrote 40 verses, Nanyar, few booklets here and there, right? And yet, to this day, the echo of his life inspires so many people. Just the memory of that life, just the memory of that presence inspires so many people. It does so much good in the world. That is the balam that Bhagavan is talking about. That is balam, right? That is power, sheer power. Power that we cannot imagine. Power that is not present in armaments and tanks and missiles, right? This is a different kind of power. Also, it works for the good of the world, right? It does not work for petty aims. So that is balam. That is balavatam. Balam balavatam. That is the balam that Bhagavan is talking about. Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. This is also very powerful. He says, I am kamaha also. I am desire too. But what kind of desire? Dharma aviruddhaha. That which is non-opposed to dharma. Bhuteshu. In all beings. Kamo asmi bharatarshava. Right. So let us take example from nature. You see a lion, right? Lion is hungry. Lion is hungry. It goes out on the field. It sees a deer. It kills it. Okay. Is that karma? Yes. Right. Is it opposed to dharma? No. It's the dharma of the lion to eat a deer. Right. Let's take a human couple. Married, man and woman, married in the institution of marriage, they want to have a child. Is it kamaha? It is kamaha. Is it opposed to dharma? No. It is not. Right? So in that kama is, Bhagavan is in that. Right? But if I want to steal somebody else's money, something that rightfully belongs to them, if I want to steal it, that is kama, but Bhagavan is not in that. Because he says, I am not in that kama that is opposed to dharma. Right? Of course, dharma is a subtle thing, and it's not easy always. The way life is, as it gets more complicated, the examples I gave are easy examples. Chetas has gone away, so I can get away with this. The moment he comes back, he will ask some difficult question. So let me pass on to the next verse quickly. Hi, Chetas. Just escaped a tough point here. So any other questions from the rest of you, from the easy crowd?
Professor, I mean, just one thing.
Yes. We're also getting some Chetas waves.
So when you said, I mean, I was just talking about the lion example.
Right.
So killing something, or that is to satisfy its Jatar Agni, right? So is it considered calm?
Well, I mean, the lion obviously is impelled by some desire to eat, right?
But eating is to satisfy the Jatar Agni, right? And
yes,
it has to kill to satisfy it. I mean, for eating.
Right.
I mean, I maybe I have a different understanding of karma. Just trying to understand.
Yes. So Bhagavan here, the translation he gives us, let us read it. This is a good point. Here he says appetite, right? So he is translating. So let us read this. Kamaha trishna asannikristeshu vishayeshu. Appetite is the craving for objects that are not presented, and attachment is the pleasure felt once the objects become available.
Okay.
So the lion roams the way I understand it, lion roams the forest looking for food, right?
Yeah.
So you're right. One can interpret kama in two ways, as lust or as a general desire, right?
Yeah.
In this case, I believe that Bhagavan is intending it in a, and according to the commentary, it is merely a longing for those things that are not presented. So it can be for any object, not merely lust.
Okay.
That's what I make of it. Let us read a little bit more to make sure the commentary confirms or gives some additional insight. Tatcha balam kama raga vivarjam. Kamascha ragascha kama raga. Okay, fine. Of kama, both kama and raga taken together is kama raga. Kama raga. Oh, that was the previous one. Sorry, I'm reading still the top pada. My mistake. ताभ्यां विवर्जितम देहादि धारण मात्रार्थम बलम सत्वम अहम अस्मि. Okay, न तु यत् संसारिणां तृष्णराग कारणम. Okay, किंच धर्मा विरुद्धः धर्मेण शास्त्रार्थेन अविरुद्धः यः प्राणिषु भूतेषु कामः यथा देह धारण मात्राध्यर्थः. That is, for instance, to sustain the body, the appetite of living beings that is sufficient to sustain the body, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody has done a study of animals, but generally they don't kill other than to eat.
Yeah.
Right.
Or to mark their kingdom, like their, like to establish their domain over a territory.
Right. So the appetite of living beings that is sufficient to sustain the body and directed to eating and drinking, and that is unopposed to righteousness, that is the content of the Shastras, that appetite I am, O foremost Bharata Prince. Right?
Yes.
Now, you're right in the sense that I have given a broader definition actually than what Bhagavan has given here. He has given the idea of only sustaining the body. deha dharana matra dhyartha. Nevertheless, I quite believe that, for instance, he says, but my broader definition still falls under the previous one. He says, to the content of the Shastrarthena Aviruddha. So when you take the thing of desire for a child, there is something called Putra Kameshti Yagam.
Yeah.
So that Putra Kameshti Yagam is sanctioned by the Shastras. Dasharatha performed it.
Yeah.
In order to have the birth of his sons, right?
Yes.
So that is the sense that Bhagavan is saying, right? So although he does not mention that particular example, it falls under the broader umbrella of being sanctioned by the Shastras. So, but in any way, you get the general essence of it?
Yes, Professor. Yeah.
So he's saying that desire by itself is not wrong as long as it is not opposed to dharma, right? Yeah. What that dharma is and how you interpret every particular incident is something that is a riddle left to every human being to decide on their own, right?
Yeah.
That's right. Who is going to read the next one? Oh, we're almost at time actually. 12. I think 12 will be a good place to stop actually. So let us read 12 though, because it gives a nice summary of all the verses we've discussed so far. Please.
I can go.
Yes, please, Mahesh.
Yachaiva satvika bhava rajasasta swaye matta ebeti tam vidhi natvaham tesu temahi.
Yeah, very nice. Yes. Yechaiva satvika bhava rajasaha tamasaha cha ye matta eva iti tan vidhi natu aham teshu te mayi. So whatever these things, sattvic, rajasic or tamasic, bhava, yecha eva sattvika bhava, and the rajasaha and the tamasaha, so ye, matta eva iti tan vidhi, the eti, actually not iti, it is eti means comes from, moves from. They proceed, know these to proceed from me. So, evam vidhi. The last verse is very father. Natu aham tesho. I am not in them, but they are in me. So this is a difficult verse to understand. The last pada is difficult to understand. Whatever objects are constituted by ye iti, ye cha eva satvikaha sattva nirvrittaha bhavaha padarthaha. Whatever objects are constituted by sattva, rajas and tamas. And he says, see chapter 14. Let us just continue for the moment. And generated by the karmic forces. Ye kechit praninam swakarma vashat jayante. Know them all to be born of me alone. Tan mattaha eva jayamanat iti vidhi. Evam vidhi. Sarvan samastan eva. Yat yapi te mattaha jayante. Even though they are born of me. Tathapi natu aham teshu tad adhinaha. Nevertheless, I am not in them. Meaning, I am not subject to them as the transmigrating jivas are. Tad vashaha yata samsarinaha. Te punaha mayi mad vashaha mad adhinaha. On the contrary, they are subject to me. Right? So, now this summary verse, it brings together all these things, and I hope it was useful to understand how Bhagavan talks about the phenomenal world, reduces it to the 5 elements, and I told you those are reduced to the 3 gunas. So in the end, he's summarizing everything and saying that the single thread by which I can connect all the sthula and the sukshma and the karana are through the guna theory. Right? And he says, whatever things there are, so now he's covering all the 3 shariras. He says all that are basically composed of sattva, rajas, tamas. these proceed from me alone. Because we say that the Shakti of Ishvara, the power of the Lord, is these three gunas. We worship that as her as Devi, right? The very power of these three gunas, which is also called the Maya of Brahman, is this Shakti. It's the power of the Lord. Just as fire has a power to burn, the power of the Lord is the Maya. It is this Trigunatmika, right? But the interesting thing that he says is, although these proceed from me, the beings that are generated and are subject to karma are adhina. They are under the power of this Maya, right? They cannot transcend this Maya as long as they maintain their limited identity. It is only when they transcend those upadhis, which we call avidya, the root ignorance, then that jiva merges back into me. That jiva understands its original identity with me, and I am never subject to those restrictions because that is my power. Correct? A king is not subject to the power of his army, but the army is his. Yes or no? The army is not going to come and arrest the king. In the same way, Bhagavan's relation to the gunas is, indeed everything issues from him, the gunas issue from him, and therefore all those, in that sense, I am in all of them. I am not in those gunas, I am not subject to their power, but they are in me. Okay? So I think here the commentary of Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya was very useful, and that's the power of the Bhashyam, that it helps to clarify some of these very difficult padas, which are more experiential and hard to explain without the power of intellect like that. So, so in that sense, any questions? Because that was a particularly tricky verse, in my opinion. I think the analogy of the king and the army is the most easy one in the physical plane to understand, that the king controls the army, but he's not subject to the army himself, right? That is his power. So similarly, the gunas as Shakti are the power of the Lord. So that is why in our Trimurti, we always associate a female form, correct? Remember that? So Brahma is the creator, right? But with what power does he create?
Like Vedas or the knowledge.
His consort is Saraswati.
Yeah.
Without Saraswati, Brahma is nothing. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Haven't we learned this? Without Lakshmi, Vishnu is nothing. Without Parvati, Shiva is nothing, or Shakti, right? And yet, when we pray to the Devi, she is always called, the consort, right? And she addresses the Lord as her Lord, right? Isn't that true?
Yes.
You see how that personification in our Trimurti explains this so beautifully, right?
Yeah.
So without her, without the feminine aspect or the Shakti aspect, nothing moves. Actually, the beginning verse, Shalabh had asked me about Saundarya Lahari.
Yeah.
The very first verse, right, Shalabh?
Yeah.
Did you read it?
Yes.
Ah.
I started with it.
So that's the first verse, right?
Yes, yes.
Without Shakti, Shiva is nothing. He is in fact Shava, dead.
Yes.
right? But at the same time, he is not nothing, because the one who has conquered that Shakti is he who is Shiva, right? He has Shakti under his control. That's why he's Shiva, right? And that is achieved only in that ultimate state of yoga. That's why he's called Yogeshwara, right? Or Adinath. So anyway, that is some kind of Puranic explanation.
Dr. Sankar, a question I have.
Yes.
When you just mentioned Trimurti and Parvati and Shiva, for example, right? So maybe my notion of understanding probably wrong. The Shiva, so Shiva, like as compared as a Brahman, right? So the inactive form, and when the Shakti or Parvati, right? So Parvati is the active form, and then she projects the world with her Maya, right? And that's how all this world is. So Shiva is the inactive form, Parvati is the active form, right? In that way, can we understand or?
Yes. So definitely, the static aspect is denoted Shiva. The dynamic aspect is denoted as Shakti. Yes, absolutely. And that's what Bhagavan is saying here, that he is not subject to the Maya, to his own Maya.
Right? Yeah, that projects from him.
Yes.
That is his power, right?
Yes. So in a Saguna aspect, that is the way to understand. Acha, very good. Any other questions? We ran a little over, I'm sorry. But I think next time we will start at 13, which is now going into more a philosophical aspect.
Dr. Shankar, I have a question.
Yes, please.
So it's from where you started. So you mentioned that there are all these Adhishthan Devata corresponding to every chakra.
Right.
And by understanding, so what is the purpose of understanding and knowing these Adhishthan Devata, particular chakra? Is it because a sadhak may be bothered because of some problems related to that chakra or something like that?
They are, what shall we say? They are encountered. They are understood on the path, right? Just as we need a map to go from here to Des Moines or Ankeny, right? So we map out, these are the towns that you'll encounter on the way. On the inner path of the sadhak, these are the towns that you encounter on the way. And those are the rulers of those towns, right? So when you go from, or if you go on international, if you do a cross-country trip, trans-country trip, you'll need to know whether I'm passing through an Islamic state or I'm passing through a Christian country, who is the king, who is the ruler, who is the emir, who is the politician, which country, which party is in power, etc. Right? That's the idea. Yeah, indeed. Yes, blockages in them can be attributed to, or diseases can be, or various ailments can be attributed to blockages in them, undoubtedly. And so knowledge and meditation on them in the right, proper way helps.
Gee.
Anything else? Otherwise, shall we say Shanti Mantram? It was lovely to see you all. I hope you're enjoying. I personally think, particularly at this time of the pandemic and things, such group meetings with face to face, as best as we can do it, discussing these things are very, very good for the mind, because otherwise, there are two things: dukkha daurmanasya, sadness and depression. Right? These two are very easy to contract at this time of social distancing, physical distancing, and only thing we have are the electronic devices, which don't usually conduce to that positive feeling. So I think that's why I think particular value is there in meeting, because we don't see each other as often as we used to in the, in the flesh. And so I think this is very, very useful, and I think it's highly recommended. So if you even have people who you think will benefit, please spread the word. It's not that I have anything profound to say. What is beautiful is there in the book. All I'm doing is pulling you to take a look at it. That's all, right? And I do think the power of this text is so great that it will definitely uplift you. It will definitely move you into a better frame of mind. So, and same thing for the Sandhya Vandanam practice also. These things have been coming for more than thousands of years. You know, I'm just a small parrot who finds it interesting to say that again and again and bore you after a while. Okay, so have a lovely rest of your weekend, and we will meet again. So, Om Tachamyora Vrinimahe Gatum Yajnaya Gatum Yajnapataye Daivihi Swastirastu Naham Swastirmanushebhyah Urdhvam Jigatu Bheshajam Shanno Astu Dvipadehe Sham Chatushpade Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste everyone. Have a lovely evening and see you soon. Okay.
Namaste, Dr. Shankar.
Namaste.